Hello and good evening. Welcome back to another episode of Arsenal Analysed Live. It's been around about 10 days since the last video or show on the channel, so apologies where they are due. But this evening, we have the Arsenal mid-season review, and the first part of our season has been one hell of a journey so far. Probably surprised quite a few Gooners in a good way. And to dissect how Arsenal have gotten on in those first 14 games are a panelist or panelists even of friends here, starting with Neil. How are we doing this evening, my friend?
I'm good, bro. Thank you for having me on again. I appreciate it. Don't worry, you'll get your rent in the meal.
Good man. And Tony, someone who's been on the channel quite a few times before, but it's been a while since you last appeared. So I'm really glad to have you back on. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good, man. I'm feeling way better than what I should. Had to have a quick meeting with all my neighbors because they're starting asking why I was having so many different black and blues all over my mark, and they thought that I was all over my body. They thought that I was doing a midnight wrestling. I just had to really casually explain to them that it was from all the times that I was pinching and punching myself just to make sure I wasn't dreaming. And sure enough, yeah, we're still top of the league and 5 points clear.
I love it.
Brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. And last, by no means least, co-host Keith, how are we doing this evening, my friend?
I'm very, very well. Thank you again for getting me on. I would just like to say I'm getting ready.
Oh, damn.
Good man. Good
We
man.
won't talk about that. It's all Arsenal.
Brilliant. Now, look, listen, just before we jump into the first few questions of today's show, a couple of quick announcements. So, one thing I just wanted to discuss with everyone moving forwards is the Arsenal Analysed team. As most of you already know, those regular watchers, Keith was recently made co-host of the live shows, and regular panelists moving forward as well will be Neil and Tony, as I call him, Judge, according to his Twitter page. So this is going to be the Arsenal Analysed team moving forward. So expect to see these handsome faces on the channel more often. Beyond that, you will also see subscribers and members appearing on the channel as well, as I am slowly going to ramp up the amount of live shows on the channel moving forward. Don't worry. The videos on tactical analysis, scout reports on players, and that stuff isn't going anywhere, but there will be more live shows in terms of previews and post-match reaction with these handsome gentlemen, as well as subscribers. And if you do want to get involved and have an opportunity to appear on Arsenal Analysed Live in the future, all you need to do is become a member of the channel for just 99p. I'm in the process of reworking how memberships work. 99p is all you need to contribute on a monthly basis in order to have opportunities to appear on the channel, and a whole host of other benefits too. So go check them out. And if you haven't done so already, go ahead and drop a like on today's live show. It's much, much appreciated. Subscribe if you're new around here. But let's waste no more time at all and dive into that very first question, coming to my co-host first. Could be a difficult question depending on who you're asking, but there have been some really good performances, whether it be over a couple of games or maybe consistently over the 14 Premier League games, as well as cup competitions. But Keith, in your opinion, and please do explain why, who would be your sort of contender at this point for best Arsenal player?
You know what? There are so many. I think literally everybody. That starting 11, when everyone's fit, it picks itself. And we all know the players that we want in there. Very nice. And there are so many that have played well. But think about it. The ones for real note, Granit Xhaka has really, really stood out. Like the redemption that he's going through at the moment.
Yeah.
After what happened against Palace, I never ever thought that, you know, you'd see this day for him. I think Thomas Partey is literally, he's got to be one of the first names on the team sheet. He's starting to be the La Liga version that we bought, and it seems like it's took him a bit of time to come to terms with the physicality of this league.
Yeah.
But the difference when he's not in the team is phenomenal. I think another one who is worthy of note is Bukayo Saka. I thought he had quite a slow start to the season, to be honest. He didn't look like he was fully at it, but the last few games he's just been immense, and you can see the fear when he's got the ball in the other team.
Yeah.
Ben White's another one. Again,
It's difficult,
I thought it took him a while to get used to the right back role, and I hate myself for saying this, but I remember Neville and Carragher saying about the huge difference between going from a central defender to a wide defender, and it would take him probably 7 or 8 games to get used to it. And there were games early on. There was a couple of times he left the guy who I'm going to put in as my player of the season. He left him in the shit quite a few times with his distribution was a bit poor. And he managed himself out. But you look at what Ben White's doing now, and I'm thinking he's got to be in with a really strong shout of getting the right back spot for England's first game.
I agree.
Iran, I think it is. He's like the last probably 8 or 9 games, he's been absolutely brilliant, and I really can't fault him. But it's got to be Saliba for me. When you think how young this kid is, and he's like 7 or 8 seasons off hitting his peak, and he's just so calm. Yes, he's made a few mistakes, but he's 21 years old, and he's a central defender, playing at the top of the league, in one of the toughest leagues. So him for me, all day long, I think he's been absolutely brilliant.
No, you make a very good point on Saliba. I did wonder whether or not he was even going to start, because Ben White had such a great season last year at centre-back. And I think it did raise a few eyebrows when he came straight into the side and Ben White was pushed out to right-back. And we've all been pleasantly surprised by the performances from both Saliba, because it is, as you pointed out, a huge step up in quality, and no disrespect to the French League, but going from the French League at such a young age to the Premier League at a top club. So, yeah, credit where credit's due. And, you mentioned a few names there, and G Talks from the Armoury also mentions that it is so hard to choose. The list of names that you can go through. Yeah, absolutely. The list of names that you could talk about individually is probably a live show in itself, because of how well Arsenal have performed this season. And, for myself, and I'm sure you guys went through the same process, but I sat there and I thought to myself, right, how do you pick the best player? Do you look at individual performances and consistency? Do you look at, if you take that player out of the starting 11, how does it affect the rest of the team? Like you said, Keith, when you take Partey out, the team just doesn't operate in the same way. So there's so many different factors to consider as to who is and why the best player so far this season. But Saliba is an excellent shout. I'm going to come to you next, Neil, on your choice for your best player of the season. Do you agree with Keith? Does it sit with someone else? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this question.
No, there's not. Quite frankly, the best players have been the team that is in existence that is having us in the position that we are right now, top of the league, 5 points clear. But after looking over it and thinking about it, one thing kind of came to me, and it was the fact that what positional play allows our attack to be as threatening as it is right now? It's our defense. It's our defense that is allowing our midfield and our strikers and our wide players to perform the way that they've been performing. And I know that they are coming back, they're tracking back to help defend. But a lot of times, once that ball gets to our back line, there's a sense of calm. I'm not nervous.
Yeah.
I am not nervous when it comes to that. And that is why I went ahead and I chose Saliba. You're right. Ben White did have a very good season last year alongside Gabriel.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the level that was raised when Saliba came in, is like, you can tell that there's a higher level of defending. There's a calmness when that ball gets in the back there. Even if it's a one-on-one thing, I'm putting my money on Saliba.
Okay. Perfect. So 2 for Saliba so far. As we said, there's no right or wrong answers. And G, if you are still watching, I know you've mentioned about 5 or 6 players, but pop your name in the chat. It'd be great to know if you were really pushed to answer that question, and anyone else watching in the chat as well. Get your answers in. It'd be great to hear from the rest of you Gooners on who your best player of the season is so far. Coming to you last, Tony. What are your thoughts on best player so far this season?
Oh, Jake, man, you broke my heart with this one.
It's tough, mate. It's tough.
That was a tough one. It really was a tough one. My personal decision, it was actually for probably one of the most controversial players in the past, and that was for Granit Xhaka. My reasoning behind it is it didn't really have that much to do with his technical ability, which is still good because within 20 matches he's already had 4 goals and 3 assists. But rather it was because of the turnaround in the character that we've seen since Mikel Arteta started using him so frequently. I mean, he went from really just an unstable player to an effective and often selfless player, and he's naturally a really inspirational focal point for the rest of the young players that are on the pitch as well. It's incredible. The partnership that he's got with Thomas Partey and Odegaard, it adds a really solid spine to the mid, which is something that we've needed for a while now. We finally have it. Defensively, I love the fact that he'll drop in when we start to lose position to help out, and then offensively, he links up so well with Odegaard, and he offers so many different attacking options. For me, I think it's his mentality is now so very focused, and the way that he's remade his image, as it stands right now, it's been phenomenal, and that's, for me personally, that's why I chose him for the best player.
It's a great shout. Me and Keith have spoken at length since the start of the season about Granit Xhaka for good and bad reasons. But we've both given him credit where it's due because he's been absolutely outstanding this season. Player reborn, if you will. And I think, you're absolutely right. A lot of players talk about him in sort of training and behind the scenes, and the sort of mentality that he has, and the sort of leader that he is, and the role model that he is. So, we got to see a lot of that in that documentary that came out in August as well, which was nice. But the way he's working in that half space at the moment and rotating with Martinelli and Jesus is just, 18 months ago, you would never have guessed that would have been the case. So excellent shout. For me personally, it was between Thomas Partey and Gabriel Jesus. Thomas Partey for the simple fact that, as Keith mentioned, if you take him out of this team, it just doesn't look right. And there were a couple of occasions where he wasn't playing earlier in the season, and it was a noticeable difference in the middle of the park. He's the engine. He sets the tempo. His long balls, the way he breaks the lines, it's just absolutely outstanding. And then second to that was Gabriel Jesus, just due to his work rate and mentality, bringing that winning mentality to this side, adding a completely different dimension. And you can see this sheer upgrade that you've got from Lacazette to Jesus as a traditional number 9, if you will, and the effect that it's had on the likes of Gabriel Martinelli and Bukayo Saka. It's evident. It is really, really, really evident. So a difficult question. And G has gone on to say Jesus as well when pushed. So I think we can all agree that it was a difficult question to kick off today's live show. So feel free to get your answers in the chat, and don't forget to drop a like and subscribe if you're new around here. And Tony, I'm going to be really horrible and come back to you on the next question straight away because I gave you the most amount of time on the first question. Yeah. But Arsenal have been quite busy in the last 2 summer windows. I would say that we signed 3 senior players to sort of integrate into the first team. I know Marquinhos was signed in the summer as well, who's been more of a kind of sort of hot prospect, if you will, for the future. We have the 2 American lads that came in as well, but they were signed in January, even though they came in the summer. Trusty went out on loan, and Turner's been more of a backup. But I'd say the sort of the 3 main signings, I think we can all agree, unless I'm being stupid and I've missed someone, was Jesus, Zinchenko, and Vieira. So my question to you is, who has been Arsenal's best signing so far from those players, and why? Yeah,
this one basically picked itself. I wouldn't be surprised a lot of other individuals chose the same individual as well. But for me, it's definitely Jesus. That's not really even. There have been other good signings, quality signings, but Jesus is the one that definitely stands out by far the most. And I know that the goal drought recently hasn't exactly done wonders for his confidence because he's had 14 matches and 5 goals. But if we look at his assist, it shows how much of an impact he's already had on the squad since he got here. I mean, he's a natural, very charismatic player, and he's a leader. And the thing is, his work rate it's insane. I think it's probably one of the best work rates that I've ever seen in any Arsenal player. He's very selfless, and he's going to pass the ball to any other squad mate if it's going to give that individual a chance to score and to get Arsenal ahead and to get those 3 points, which is really what we need. Other than that, I would like to see a little bit of consistency when it comes to the goal scoring, but that's not the primary thing. What's actually it's his selflessness. It's the leadership that he brings to the squad, and I'm personally very excited to see him when he's on the pitch just because of the work rate and how he plays. It's phenomenal, and that's, for me, up till this point, he's been the best signing that we've made in a while.
He's been excellent. He's been absolutely excellent. I can't argue with any of the points that you've made. And I think why a lot of Arsenal fans aren't moaning about the lack of goals like we've had in the past with Aubameyang and Lacazette last season is because of all the other bits and pieces he does for this team when, we're not in possession, or the work rate, like you mentioned. So, yeah, really, really hard to argue with any of the points made. G mentions that Zinchenko is definitely in with a shout. Bit of a disappointment through injury, of course. Hopefully that isn't something we need to worry about moving forwards. Keith, what are your thoughts on best signing so far this season?
Right. Firstly, Vieira. When we bought him, the popular consensus was that he was going to be back up for Odegaard.
Yeah.
Now, I see that there's that, but I think also, as he proved in the second half against Wolves, he's equally adept playing left hand of the pivot, and I thought he did really, really well. And I hadn't seen that coming, to be honest. Took him a while to get to pace with the game, but he's also got that. And when you look at the signings that we've made, I know he's just been promoted to sporting director, and between him and Arteta, the signings they've made, the one thing that struck me is the versatility of all the players. Jesus can play anywhere across the front. Vieira can play a variety of different roles. Zinchenko as well. Left back, he could also fill that role. And just to back up what G said in the chat there, initially I would have said Zinchenko because I was so impressed with him. I've said a few times when we've been on about how impressed I've been with him, but again, echoing what G said, the injuries have hampered him. And then you come to Mr. Gabriel Jesus. As I said to my mate Piers Morgan on YouTube the other night, like, you got to look past the stats. Even though he's got number 9 on his back, we've kind of been duped a little bit because we are playing sometimes with a false 9 without actually realising it. You look at the work rate of this guy, like Tony said, it's literally off the charts. I don't think I've ever seen an Arsenal player work as hard as him, or I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. Rocky maybe, like back in the day. But he works so hard, and do you know what? If he doesn't score another goal for the rest of the season, obviously it will affect him. But I'm not bothered if he don't score, because what he's doing is creating chances for other people. It doesn't matter who sticks the ball in the back of the onion again. And I absolutely love the bloke. And I'm mortified that I forgot to mention him after the first question. But without doubt, top signing for me, Gabriel Jesus, 1 mile.
Can't argue with that either. It's a really easy one, isn't it? Neil, are you going to sort of come away from what the two boys have said so far?
Absolutely not. I'm going to definitely jump on that bandwagon myself because Keith is right, in saying that if he doesn't score again this season, I'm not going to be bothered by it because what he's doing is facilitating. And it also makes you wonder, did Arteta buy him for goals, or did we bring him in for the work rate? Because he would have known that, he in history has had dips of goals and scoring goals, but
Yeah.
his work rate has always remained the same. So, I think the idea of him not scoring is not too much of a bother, but what he also does to the team in terms of raising every player's level around him, like I've not seen this version of Martin Odegaard. I've not seen this version of Gabriel Martinelli, or I've not seen this version of Bukayo Saka either. So it goes to show the effect that he has when he's a part of the team. So it has to be Jesus for me.
Yeah, I think it's a real easy one, and you make a great point there with Odegaard, and I can't remember exactly when, but I know at some point last season we've all been on shows together where we mentioned how many more assists or how much more of a difference Odegaard would be making in that final third if he had the right players in front of him, and we're now starting to see that because of Jesus and the effect, as you rightly mentioned, that he's also had on the likes of Martinelli as well as Bukayo Saka, and that over time is only going to get better and better. So hopefully we've got a bright future to look forward to. Neil, I don't think I've come to you first with a question yet, so I'm going to come straight back to you on the next one. Best performance. Sorry?
Didn't you? No, you went to Keith first, I think.
Keith first, then Tony. Yeah. So now it's your turn. Yeah,
damn it.
Yeah, you get the least amount of time to think about it now. So best performance from Arsenal so far this season. I've personally put out there, we're looking at maybe the 1-0 against Chelsea away from home, the 3-2 against Liverpool. It's been a long time since we beat them, and you can never, ever look away from spanking the Spuds from down the lane 3-1 at home. So it doesn't have to be one of those three, but what is your sort of best Arsenal performance this season so far, and why?
Oh, man. It's always good to beat the Swamp Dwellers, but I mean they're not really nothing to beat. Like it's not that they're not important. But the Liverpool win was a very good win. The Chelsea win was a very good win. For me, the Leeds win was for me a win that showed the steel of the team. We were very resilient. Leeds had pressed us. They kept coming all the way to the 90-plus minute, and we were able to hold them off. And that win to me was pivotal for the mindset of the team and the club. It's no longer we go up 1-0 and then we lose ourselves and they come back and score, and then we drop our shoulders and our heads and they score another one, and before you know it, it's 2-1 and we go back home. It's not that team anymore. And for me, that Leeds win spoke volumes on the mentality of this team now. So I'll go with the Leeds win 1-0.
It's a great point because, sometimes they say that it's sometimes the smaller teams that, sit back that are more difficult. And I know that wasn't the case with Leeds. They really did come at us. And I remember watching the game and I was sat there thinking, like, how on earth have we not conceded in this game?
Exactly. And just to add one more thing, I mean, going at the bridge for Mikel Arteta is probably like going to the pub. He's definitely going to have a few. Because honestly, like he broke that bad luck of Arsenal going to Stamford Bridge and losing. We've done well since under him going to the bridge. So, that's just my 2 cents.
No, again, another great point, and it doesn't just have to sit with what we've done at the bridge. And I know we haven't always beaten the likes of Liverpool and City recently, but the performances that we are putting in against those top 6 rivals has changed drastically since Arteta has come in. So you make some very, very good points. Tony, coming to you next. What are your thoughts on best performance and why?
Yeah, so in my case, I dislike Chelsea because they're our rivals. I dislike Man United because they're our rivals. I despise Tottenham because I'm a decent human being. Sad. That's sad. I think our win against Liverpool. I think I really had to go with our win against Liverpool. It's because, and I was tempted to say Tottenham, but really that 3-2 that we won against Liverpool, it showed something. It showed something special, and it showed our mental toughness and the sheer determination that we had to win, despite the fact that we let the lead slip not just once but twice, and we still fought back to regain that lead, even though it was through a penalty. But still, it's, the fact that we kept going, the determination that we had, and the mental toughness, it really shows how serious we are now as a club. When you consider the fact that 2 seasons ago, had that first goal for Liverpool gone in, and we would have had the draw right away, it would have been difficult. It would have been an uphill battle for us all the way through, because of that, the tendency that we had to capitulate during that time.
Yeah.
But the mental toughness of the squad, and it's a club culture makeover, is like what I like to call it, Arteta style. But it's been absolutely phenomenal. And for me, I think that particular win, especially against a side like Liverpool that's still dangerous despite how much they're struggling now, it really shows the determination and the grit that we have right now as a squad and as a club. Love it.
No, I completely agree. That's who I had as my best result so far this season as well, because we've often played Liverpool and lost quite badly. And from a psychological point of view as well, to beat them the way we did was fantastic. And what makes me laugh is that after the win, a lot of pundits, a lot of fans, rivals, whatever you want to call it, we're giving Arsenal stick because Liverpool have played so poorly this season. It was an easy time to play Liverpool, but they went and then beat Man City 1-0, who have been absolutely outrageous this season the following week. So that argument very quickly went out of the window. And my good friend Albert, big up to yourself, my man. He also agrees with me and Tony on the result and how massive it was as well in the grand scheme of things, given where it was in the schedule. G went with Wolves as well. Very, very tough game considering where it was and the importance of it coming into the sort of World Cup. Staying top at Christmas for 6 weeks is very, very, very nice. And Albert and G go on to continue talking about Liverpool, which brings me to Keith. What are your thoughts, my friend?
Right, a few games that stick out. First one of the season, away at Palace Friday night.
Yes.
That just stank to me of Brentford and Sky TV, and it was just an accident waiting to happen. But when all was said and done in that game, I looked at it, I thought, we look different this year. Even at that early stage, we looked different. Winning at Stamford Bridge, it's always nice to win there, but I thought Chelsea were very, very poor, to be honest. And we did enough. I think it was Gabriel that scored from the corner, wasn't it? Then, like everyone else, I'm looking at the 2 games. Obviously, it's always wonderful to beat the Swamp Dwellers, but they were quite poor, and Hugo Lloris had an absolute fucking car crash of a game, basically. So for me, like a lot of you, it's the Liverpool game. We've beat them twice since 2015 in the league, and more often than not, it's been 4-1, 4-0, 3-0. We've been their whipping boys. We've literally been their bitches. And I hate Jurgen Klopp. And I go back to 2001 because my dad's a Liverpool fan, when Michael Owen mugged us right at the end at the Millennium Stadium. And when we scored, I said to my dad, I said, I'm not going to gloat because, we were hot favourites. I said, and I didn't. And then when Michael Owen scored at the end, he was up in my face. He was giving it just massive amounts of abuse, basically. And so clearly I gave that back to him when we beat them 3-2. But like Tony said, they dragged us back a couple of times, and maybe this time last season we perhaps would have capitulated, but we stayed strong, and we'll probably go into things like that in a little while. But that's the one for me because of what it meant actually beating Liverpool, and we started the game on fire. It was like a minute in, wasn't it, when Gabby scored, and then they got their foot back in, and to be honest, towards the end of the second half we were struggling. And the fact that we came out and we played exceptionally well in the second half. And at that point, when they equalised, I probably would have taken it 2-2. But But no, that was massive for me. So that's been my favourite one of the season.
Yeah, I think it might have been for quite a few Arsenal fans for many of the reasons that you've mentioned, especially the fact that we've been, like you said, they're bitches for many years now, and unfortunately it is the case, and it's never been a 1 or a 2-0. It always has been like an absolute horrible result, like 3-4, 5-0, where it really does affect you. So yeah, in terms of mentality, in terms of what we're trying to do this season and where we're trying to go, absolutely huge in the grand scheme of things. So going to come back to you, Keith, on the next question. Feels quite nice saying this. We've not lost many games so far this season. There's not been too many disappointing performances. But I don't like to look at the negatives too much. I don't like to focus on the negatives, but we like to do things constructively. We have to look at these things and maybe look at how we can do things better and the reasons for why we lost. So I just wanted to ask you what your thoughts were on sort of your personal most disappointing performance of the season so far.
Man United.
Yeah.
Man United.
Tell me why.
We were shit against Southampton, but so many reasons for Man United. Right, because I come from, or I live in rural Northamptonshire, clearly I'm surrounded by Man United fans. There's literally at least 30 of them that live in my village. And with the exception of one, they're all what you would call typical Man United fans. And there's one, he was like even trolling me on like, we're in this chat group, we're all in chat groups, aren't we, with different fans and what have you.
Yeah.
But this one guy, he was like trolling me on every single social media platform as well, just because they turned us over 3-1. And the thing that really pisses me off is after 14 games, if it wasn't for that game, we would have got to this Christmas World Cup break being unbeaten. And we all know what everybody would have been talking about at that point. So maybe it's not the worst thing in the world because it's extra pressure. But if it wasn't for that game, we would still be unbeaten. And anyone who knows me knows I've always been a huge fan of Mikel Arteta. And in his reign, I think he's made 2 big mistakes. When he went with the false 9 against Villarreal in the first leg. And I think when he threw the kitchen sink at him, I think it was 1-1 or we might have been 2-1 down. And we kind of lost our shape quite badly. And that was our 6th game, wasn't it? So we played 5-1-5. So he obviously gambled. I don't want to slate him too much because I love the fact we've got a manager who's prepared to gamble and make changes and go for the win at every opportunity. I love that. But I think he probably made a mistake in that game. But they weren't 3-1 better than us. The thing that struck me was how much quicker than Saliba Marcus Rashford was.
Yes.
I thought Saliba was probably one of the quickest players in the league, but he absolutely rinsed him. And that perhaps was seeing signs of Rashford coming back into form. But they weren't 3-1 better than us. And it just, there's the teams I hate losing against Chelsea, obviously Liverpool. But between Spurs and Man United, I can't choose between them, I don't think, because I hate Spurs for the same reasons that Tony does, because I'm a decent human being who appreciates just, the nice things in life. But because of Man United, it's the fans that I know, and I know what's going to come my way. And I literally dislike everything about Man United. By the way, just straying off the path quickly, then I'll let everyone else have a chat when I've finished spouting on. They're taking appropriate action over the interview. I say interview with journalist Piers Morgan, but apparently everyone's got that wrong. They're not taking appropriate action against Cristiano Ronaldo. They're just going to get some new jacuzzis in so he can be happy with new jacuzzis since he was last there. But Man United,
what a spanner!
Awful.
What a spanner!
Awful club, awful people, hate them so much. Hate to them.
Such a shame they're in where they are at the moment, eh? Such a shame that all these Man United fans have got to deal with Ronaldo's situation after they gave a stick about Aubameyang and Ozil. How the tables have turned. How the tables have turned. So they've all gone very quiet about that, funnily enough. So
Piers Morgan will start supporting Man U now, though.
Yeah, oh mate, it wouldn't surprise me. Would not surprise me at all. So I'll sit back and continue to watch with my popcorn in hand to see how it all unfolds. Neil, coming to you next, mate. What's been your most disappointing result of the season so far?
It's right there with the Man United. Like it's to lose to them is just a disgusting feeling. You know, it's it was disappointing, as Keith rightly said. We were not a 3-1. We weren't. They were 3-1 better. We won 3-1 bad. Uh, you know, we in on two occasions we probably played into their hands, having that high line, and you know Rashford likes to play on that, like to dance on that line and try to beat our defenders. Um, and that was just that could have been done better by one just minor adjustment, dropping the line a little bit deeper. But um, yeah, it had to be that defeat. It's not a good feeling to lose to a Man United that's going through one of the biggest changes in their footballing history. Having you know, that type of poor form, and then we go there with the form that we've been in, and then lose like that. You know, it was just like get it over and done with, move on, forget about it. It's like, you know, it happened, so let's move on.
Yeah, it is difficult, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of the City game last season and the Spurs game at the end of the season, where, you know, City and Spurs in those losses, they weren't necessarily like head and shoulders outperforming us. You know, it really hurt me. You know, you can sort of credit where credit's due when a team plays better than you and they beat you respectfully and stuff like that. But United weren't at the races. They really grabbed their luck and went with it and managed to grab themselves a 3-1 win. But Tony, are you going to veer from the pack on this one?
Hell no. Absolutely not. You ever have a migraine headache, you get rid of it, and then it comes right back? That's what's happening right now. Had a migraine this morning, got rid of it, started talking about this 3-1 loss, and it's back again. That game really pissed me off, and I'll be honest with you. They were lucky. I'm sorry. Really what, and I say that they were lucky because it could have been so much worse for them at the very beginning. Martinelli had the first goal before it was then disallowed, and you saw how much time it took them to disallow them. Had that goal not been disallowed, I promise you that would have been a completely different match. I'll admit Rashford was brilliant. Yeah, he was quick, and yeah, I kind of felt bad for Saliba on that one. But, you know, it was two defensive errors at once again, and they were almost the exact same defensive error that allowed him to make that run down the center and get the 2 goals that he did. You know, that said, I really think it was one of those where we were a little bit hard done by having that goal disallowed. Had they not been disallowed, like I said, it would have been a much, much different game. The pressure would have been on. And to be honest with you, for about the first 20 minutes of that match, we were the better side. Like I said, it's one of those things I just try to put bleach all over and just kind of scrub it out of my mind bit by bit. But I'm very confident that on the return leg of the Emirates, we are going to get revenge. And, well, guess what? Ronaldo's probably not going to be there to save him. Not that he did a whole lot in the first time anyways, but hey, it's going to be even better.
Hopefully we can do what we done last season when we played them in January. Got some lovely comments coming in from the likes of Pete here with regards to Arsenal being a banter club. So thank you very much for that. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next question. Coming back to you, Tony, on this one. Best goal of the season. My personal top 3. Not that you have to go with these. It could be another goal. We saw a great goal from Jesus against Leicester. That chip, if you will, into the top corner. Saliba one against Bournemouth was very nice. And there was a couple from Thomas Partey against the likes of Tottenham and also Nottingham Forest as well. So talk to me. What was your favourite goal so far this season and why?
Oh, this one I'm giving 100% into my inner Gooner. And let me tell you a funny thing about this one is I was about halfway through a sandwich when Partey got that one against Tottenham. When he did, I almost choked on the sandwich because I wasn't expecting that thing. I almost fell out of my chair, actually.
Yeah.
That was spectacular. And it was, funnily enough, actually, that one was really similar to the one that he got against Forest so far back. And the power of that strike was incredible. I mean, it felt like he basically kicked me in the stomach when he got that in. But to be honest, the one against Tottenham, I think it was the most crucial one because that was the opener that really allowed us to put on the pressure on Tottenham right away. And that was kind of what really opened up the floodgates for us. So for me, I think that was a really crucial goal, probably the most crucial that we had for that particular match. So that's why I'm going to go with that one. Thomas Partey's goal against Tottenham.
Lovely. No, it was a great goal, and just given the occasion as well, it was just so nice to watch. Keith, are you going to agree, or are you going to go with a different goal?
I'm actually going to disagree.
Interesting.
It's not often we disagree on anything. I mean, the goals that you've mentioned, like Jesus' chip against Leicester, Thomas Partey's goals against Forest and Spurs, and let's face it, I've got 87 official Premier League balls in my back garden from all of Thomas Partey's previous shots. But that seems to be his thing now. When the ball comes across him from the right hand side, he's got it, and it doesn't even matter if the keeper's expected it. You ain't stopping him. So both of his goals have been great. Do you know, there's been so many brilliant goals. Saliba's one against Bournemouth, like you said. But the one that I enjoyed the most was actually a penalty. And it was the one against Liverpool. And just to add some context, it was for everything that represented. As we said just now, we've not beaten Liverpool for donkey's years. They've always run the rule over us. And it was 2-2. Huge amount of pressure. And I know Bukayo had taken a few penalties before that, but when you look back at everything that happened after the Euros, for him to step up against a goalkeeper like Alisson, who is renowned as a good penalty stopper,
he is,
to just step up at home. I don't even remember how long was left in the game. It can't have been long left. So much pressure, and even though you look at the technical quality of the other goals, the skill this kid's got, and we were talking about it earlier, just this team spirit, and the fact that we are much more difficult to break down and to knock back now, and it shows the character not just of him but the team as well, and the celebrations afterwards. And I just, I'd love to watch a game of Richard Keys when we score at the end, just to sit there with him and see how much he enjoys us celebrating the goals.
Yeah.
But that was the one for me. It meant an awful lot for a couple of different reasons.
No, you're actually spot on. That's a really, really good shout, actually. And Arsenal have been scoring quite a few goals this season. So, there were quite a few to pick from. And it was one that I'd forgotten about. So, yeah, that's an absolutely great shout. A comment coming in here, speaking about the goal against Leeds, referencing what Neil mentioned earlier on about how important that win was. It was only the one goal in that game, and it was a very difficult finish in what was a very, very open game that should have been a lot easier than it was. But coming to you to finish off this question, Neil, before we move on to the next one, what was your goal of the season so far for Arsenal?
Sorry, was that me? I was reading the comments then.
Neil?
It was I'm just giving a dramatic pause. I
wasn't sure if the old internet bill had been
it was postpaid. It was a postpaid plan.
I was already getting on the phone right now with your internet. I was gonna say, hey.
I was gonna say, it was really, really enjoyable. The 2 times Partey scored from the distance that he did.
They were very nice indeed.
They were really beautiful goals. I jumped off my chair. I screamed so loud, my daughter started crying. And to me, I felt a little bit of wind gust when he hit that ball. I knew I felt a little breeze when that ball was hit by Partey from that distance. I'm gonna go with with Partey's goal against the Swamp Dwellers.
Great shout. Very, very great shout. I think it's definitely one of those goals because of who it was against. And he hasn't scored many goals yet for Arsenal. It's one that he will certainly remember. And the way the boys celebrated after the ball hit the back of the net was just absolutely fantastic. He ran straight over to Granit Xhaka, his partner in crime in midfield. So, yeah, great shouts from everyone on the panel. Really, really hard to argue with any of them. And some great shouts in the chat as well. with regards to some of the other goals that we've scored this season. So we will be moving on to the next question. But just before we do, if you are enjoying today's live show, do go ahead and hit that like button. It massively helps me and the channel out. Subscribe if you're new around here so you don't miss out on any future shows or tactical analysis, whether it be matches or players. That come into you next, Neil, straight back with the next question. Player-wise now, your sort of surprise package, if you will, who sort of really surprised you the most so far this season, with it be performances, whether it be goal contributions, whether it be anything. So who's your surprise package and why?
Benjamin White.
Make sure you get it right, because if he's watching
Benjamin
and you call him Ben,
White. I hope he watches this and he watches this.
He does
every single time.
He'd be DMing you straight away, asking you why you called him Ben.
Benjamin White, man, like he took ownership of the new role. He didn't moan about it. He has just grown from strength to strength in the position, and him being called up to the England squad might have partially been some kind of peer pressure, but also is a testament to how he has grown as a footballer. Yes, we've known him to have the ability to play in multiple positions, the centre back or right back or in DM position, but we haven't seen him actually played in those positions. And now seeing him now play in two positions, centre back and right back, it's like, okay, this guy, he's worth the money that was spent. You know, there was a lot of noise about the 50 million and all of that, but Benjamin White has really, been a surprise package for me in this team.
Yeah, very, very good points made. Sort of Keith mentioned it earlier with regards to Ben White and how he's transitioned out onto that sort of right back position.
Whoa. Benjamin White.
Benjamin White. Sorry, Ben. Sorry, Benjamin.
Guys.
But the transition he's made at right back, I think there probably were a lot of question marks as to whether or not he would continue there after the first few games, whether Tomiyasu would replace him or whether White would replace Saliba. So yeah, he's been absolutely exceptional. Tony, coming to you next, my friend. Who has been your surprise package player so far this season and why?
Yeah, so this was another one of those where it's a little bit difficult to pinpoint exactly who would have been, but for me personally, I went with Vieira, not Patrick Vieira. That's a different one. But for me, it was between Vieira and Zinchenko. But in Zinchenko's case, I was kind of expecting him to capitalize already on the Premier League experience that he had from being in the City. So I was expecting that he was going to do relatively decently. With Vieira, it was a little bit different in his case because he came into the Premier League, the toughest league in the world, with very little experience in this league. And he doesn't exactly have what we could say an overwhelming physicality. He's relatively
no.
Despite that, though, he's shown that he can actually be pretty effective in the mid as a Xhaka substitute when we actually need him. And he demonstrated that pretty good against Wolves when he came on, when Xhaka when he was taken off. And he made a pretty decent show also with his first goal against Brentford. So I think
excellent goal.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think it's going to be one of those where it's going to take time for him to properly adjust to the Premier League. Okay. But I really do believe so. I do believe that with experience, he's gonna be excellent as time progresses, and I hope that he'll continue to get more pitch time when he's in the Europa League, and that will transition into more time when he's on the Premier League.
It's a great shout actually, because I remember looking at Vieira's stats the season prior to when we signed him, and the goals and assists ratio for games played was absolutely outrageous. So we're now starting to see glimpses of what he can offer, and you make some great points as to why we've not seen the full player that we bought yet, because there is that transition, there is that physicality, there is that adaptation period. And I think next season will be absolutely huge in his development. So yeah, absolutely brilliant option there. And just before I come to you, Keith, G's come in with a surprise package of Saliba. Hopefully he hasn't taken that away from you. Xhaka and Ben White have also been surprise packages for G as well. So some great names being mentioned. Keith's livid. Keith's kicking right off. So talk to me, Keith. Talk to me. Who's your player so far?
Saliba has been a massive surprise. He wasn't the one I was thinking of. And just going back to what Tony was saying actually about Vieira. So we also need to consider that he didn't really get much for pre-season. Remember, he had the the medical boot on his foot. I think he missed the tour. And I do get massive Harry Potter vibes whenever I see him.
It's like Harry Potter.
Yeah, he really. I think he really.
Yeah, he does.
But anyway, that's a slight aside. The one for me, I agree 100% with my friend Neil there. Benny Blanco. Like I said earlier, the transition from central defender to fullback is clearly a difficult one. It did take him a few games to get used to it, but it's now literally, even without the injuries that the England squad have had to right backs, it's between him and Trippier for right back, and he's just been absolutely brilliant. Like his overlapping runs. I remember when I used to play on the odd occasion where I used to play fullback. It was like after Terry Venables. Do you know when he invented like the Christmas tree formation? And all of a sudden I was a wing back, which I didn't like because it's too much running. But if I like overlapped someone and they didn't give me the ball, I'd be absolutely like incandescent with rage. But he accepts that's part of his game because by doing that, he's dragging, so at least even taking somebody else's attention for the ball to be moved inside. He's very, very unselfish. And as Neil said, about the 50 million price tag, a lot of people lost their shit over that. It's Premier League tax. If he played in another country, probably would have been 25, 30 million. But when all the talk about him first started, I spent a lot of time just watching back stuff from him when he was at Brighton, when he was at Leeds, and his versatility is why we paid 50 million for him. Yeah. He's a very, very good central defender. He's now proven himself to be a world-class fullback. And I still would like to see him playing as a defensive midfielder because he's so good on the ball. And a lot is made of him not being very good in the air. He is good in the air. It's not.
He is good.
His main facet of his game. He's very good on the ball. He's very good at reading the game. Quite often, he doesn't have to make a tackle because he's read the situation so well. But him at right back, love him. Same as you. I thought Tommy would be coming straight back in once he was fit, but he's
because he played so well last season, didn't he, Tommy?
Yeah, but Tommy's another one. He can play anywhere across the back four.
Yeah, brilliant player to have.
Player. Versatility seems to be the key. But no, Benny Blanco for me.
Again, hard, really, really, really hard to argue with you guys, and just taking ourselves right back to the beginning of the show with all of these questions, or at least with most of them, there aren't really any wrong answers because Arsenal have played so well this season. It's difficult to really pinpoint just one area or one player and say, right, this is the reason for X or this is the reason for Y, because we've just been so good throughout the team. So it's great to hear the opinions. And the next one is a bit of a negative if you want to look at it like that. But as I mentioned previously, with regards to the sort of disappointing performance question, we always do things constructively on this channel. We're not a channel about ranting and raving and seeking attention or anything like that. And Keith, I'm going to come back to you on this question on what player so far would you say coming into the season, you might have expected that player to potentially have been doing a little bit better than they were. Sort of which player do you think that could have done better so far?
Now, we spoke about this before. I'm going to have to say Gabriel, defender Gabriel.
Right.
I'm not saying he's played badly, but he was so good last season. And I've said before, even though these are elite athletes, they're not machines, they're not robots, they're still human beings. And mentioned before, he's a new dad. I don't know if he gets up and does the nighttime feeds and all that sort of stuff. But certain things get taken into account. And I feel bad for him missing out on the World Cup squad, actually. But there's just been a couple of times he's made a few mistakes that he wouldn't have made last season. He hasn't quite reached those heights. But having said that, like I say, he's not had a bad season. It's just everybody else has been has really upped their game so much. Maybe it's a little bit glaring. Maybe we also need to consider that he's getting used to another central defensive partner. You know, he spent last season getting used to Benny Blanco, and now he's getting used to Saliba.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually.
You know,
really good point.
He's the only one I can think of who I wouldn't even say he's been disappointed, but by last season standards and where everybody else in the team is, probably him, I would say, sticks out.
It is a difficult question. Just going back to what I mentioned a moment ago, you know, we've played so well this season, and everyone individually has, you know, raised their levels, if you will, compared to last year and the year before that. It is difficult to pick one single player that's been, he's not played well, or he should be doing better, or they should be doing better at this, or whatever that might be. Neil, who is your player that should be doing better in your opinion, and why?
I think it's going to be Ramsey.
Sorry, I missed that. We were laughing.
That's all right. I was saying that the player that should improve a little bit, it's kind of been slacking, is Aaron Ramsdale.
Okay.
You know, I looked at a few instances where I feel he should be doing better from when he just burst out on the scene.
Yes.
Aaron Ramsdale was freaking Spider-Man, or more so like Dal Slim from Street Fighter. Like,
yeah,
he was making these insane saves.
He was.
Like very, very cut, like very quick movements. And now I'm seeing balls that are just kind of just escaping him. And I want to see Ramsdale improve in those type of areas. Like as a goalkeeper, and it's easy to say this from my perspective, and hard to do because I'm not a professional footballer, but like, you know, when you look at tapes and you look at saves that, you know, you missed, you gotta ask yourself, could I have saved that? And I feel like when he sits down and he looks at those type of tapes, he's telling himself those same things, like, I should have saved that, I should have done better there. So I would like to see a more improved Ramsdale.
Hopefully being.
Sorry, Jake.
Go on.
Just to alike to what Neil was saying, that's a really, really good point. And the one thing that sticks out for me, when he first came in, I think his first game was against West Brom in the League Cup, and his distribution was amazing, but he looks less confident with his distribution from his feet this season. I just wanted to chuck that in there because I think that's a really good shout, that, Neil. Love Aaron.
No, it is. And I think it comes down to what Neil mentioned briefly there when he said, you know, when he first came in, you know, he'd been relegated with two clubs that they weren't big clubs. And then he got a massive move. Like in his career, it was huge, absolutely huge to move to Arsenal, considering what happened in his two previous seasons. So maybe that first sort of 2 or 3 months was, you know, that sort of new signing mentality and the way he was feeling with his confidence. And look, let's not take nothing away from him. He's not been terrible, and I completely agree with what you're saying, Neil. In terms of where he was when he first started at Arsenal, you know, we were talking like 8, 9s, in some cases that Leicester game 10s every single week. But he's been average. He's been dropping those 7s, and there have been the occasional goal that he has let in where I feel he probably could have done better. But I suppose, you know, in terms of goalkeepers, for him to be playing every single week and for him to have had as much football as he has had at his age is just unheard of. So I'm hoping... Sorry, go on.
I'd also like to say, like, and this is to take nothing away from him, like, he is a phenomenal goalkeeper. But also, like, he hasn't had too many... he hasn't been a busy goalkeeper. Let me put it like that.
No, not this season. He's not.
He hasn't. Yeah, exactly. He's been probably bored. And and it's easy to get, you know, kind of go asleep a little bit and not be as awake, you know, because he likes confrontation. Like you see, like he likes the duels. He likes that type of stuff. So he's not getting that now, I suppose.
Yeah.
So that's probably what
you only have to look at that Leeds game last season where he's winding up the fans collecting coins. He loves it.
The other week he was loving it. Did you see that?
He loves it, didn't he?
Yeah, I'll back Igor Stepanovs and probably Mustafi or someone. Get them centre backs, and I think you'll start seeing the best of Rabat.
Yeah. That's a good show. We should look back again, Mustafi and.
Please no, please.
Sebastian still actually.
Tony, to finish off the question, who is yours?
All right, so I had actually originally thought about Gabriel Martinelli, the defender, just like like Keith had mentioned. But I decided to go ahead and just kind of go back. And again, it's unusual because for the best signing, I said Jesus. And there's one particular aspect. It's not so much that Gabriel Jesus could be doing better in a lot of different things, but I just wanted to pick the one aspect, Gabriel Jesus, and that would have to be in the goal scoring. Now, the reason that I'm saying this is because we've been through a very similar situation where our top striker goes through the drought. We've been through the situation twice. We were through this with Aubameyang and with Lacazette, and we know this. We know what's going to wind up happening if the drought continues on. So the reason that I would like to see more goals coming out, and for me, it's not a question of if, just rather when. When is he going to hit the form? When is he going to get back into it? And again, that's my primary reason for saying that he could do better in that facet. In everything else, he has been beyond fantastic. I mean, he really has. He's been the best signing that we've had in a while. But that's the one thing that I would like to see him improve on, would be to end the goal scoring drought, just because there's always that little bit of doubt that this could turn into another Lacazette situation, into another Aubameyang situation. I don't want to see that happening again, because the main difference that I've seen with Jesus as compared to Lacazette or to Aubameyang is just a much wider array of abilities and more it's just more technicality than I've seen from Jesus. So once he hits stride and he does start going at scoring the goals again, he's going to be unstoppable. But for now, that's the one thing. And again, it's not that he could be doing better in a lot of things, just that facet. If he can get back to the goal scoring form, perfect.
Do you know what? I don't think it's going to take long. And I think the biggest difference, and you do make a very good point with regards to his goal scoring issue, if you want to call it that, is that when you compare like his goal drought to someone like Aubameyang's and Lacazette's last season, for example, and the positions that Jesus puts himself in, there's a huge gulf for me, because there has been occasions in those 9 games where he hasn't scored, where he could have quite easily have scored. So I think you're absolutely spot on when you say it's more a case of when rather than if. And just the sheer number of chances as a team that we create and the amount of possession that we have and the players that we have around him, I do think it is a matter of when. So hopefully he can bag himself a cheeky little goal against West Ham when we return from the World Cup. And G has politely waited this time for everyone to answer. And he also makes a fantastic shout. Absolutely fantastic shout. It's his second season at the club now. And obviously, you know, the likes of Elneny, I know he was extended. He might move on next season, but there are opportunities for him. Vieira is definitely ahead of him for me. Patino's coming back and he's absolutely smashing it on his loan. Links with Tielemans isn't going away, as well as other midfield players. So, you know, come the summer, it's a really interesting one. It's a really, really, really interesting one. And I don't know.
I'd loan him out. I'd loan him out.
I mean, we've stuck with players like Eddie and Reece, opportunities to sell them, and you know, I see something in them. I see something in Sambi, but G's absolutely right. I wouldn't say he's gone backwards, but he's stagnated. Definitely stagnated. The Liverpool game last season, and it seemed like his confidence just went. But maybe he does need a loan.
I was looking
maybe he needs that regular week in, week out game time. And because, again, you know, no disrespect to the Belgian league, but, you know, when you compare it to the Premier League, the golfing quality is huge.
It's a nationwide league, to be honest.
Whether it be a top 5 league or whether it be staying in the UK, he needs to be playing week in, week out in a significantly better environment, and he's just not getting in the minutes at the moment to develop maybe as a football player.
You know what I look at when he plays? Sambi Lokonga takes one extra touch than he should. He always does it, which forces him to then make a bad pass.
Confidence.
The confidence is not there.
What Tony was saying about Gabriel Jesus, it's like you look at the goal he got against Leicester. It was he took a gamble. He was loose. He was relaxed. And then there've been chances recently. I think it was against Southampton. And me and John had a bit of back to forth on the chat group. And there are times when he's having that extra touch, or he had a chance it was on his left. And 3 months ago, he had just snapshot. But then he's cut back in onto his right, and that is the sign of somebody who's lacking in confidence. And God, he just needs one to hit him, I don't know, on the left arse cheek or on the testicle or something, dribble over the line just to get himself a goal. Because everything else is there, everything else. And for his own personal well-being and sanity, the guy just needs a goal.
I'm confident it will happen. I really am. Maybe he goes and has a mental World Cup. And comes back even hungrier. So
I hope they get on the group stage, to be honest, so he's well rested.
It's quite funny actually. Not only Arsenal fans, but a lot of fans for clubs. Obviously, given when the World Cup is this season, everyone's like, "Yeah, this club needs to go out. That team needs to go out." It is quite funny. So. We'll have to wait and see.
There's a lot of news popping up about this speech the FIFA president made. You all heard about it? And I don't want to diverge, but it's mad. And then they're making like people purchase tickets and packages at like £19,000 or more that included alcohol, but there is no alcohol now. It's mad. It's going crazy, people.
It's a bit naughty. Thank you very much. Very appreciate you coming along. But moving on to the next question, I'm going to come to you first, Tony, on this one. I'm going to do a sort of like double-barreled question for this one. And this isn't necessarily player-specific. This is just sort of generally with regards to Arsenal. What has been your biggest positive so far this season? And what would you say, if anything, is a cause for concern? So a loaded question for you.
Yeah, to be honest, it's kind of what I've spoken about with a couple of other supporters as well. It's really the club culture and the mentality that has changed so much. And it's not just amongst the players too, because now you see such a hunger to win. And you're not just seeing it amongst the players as well, but now you're also starting to see it amongst the fans. We're starting to believe again that there's a really strong possibility that we actually could win the title, or at least make the top spot and even get the Europa League title. But I really am excited to see us fight for every single yard, every possession, every challenge, every single tackle with the passion that we're doing, because we didn't, 2 seasons ago, we weren't seeing this. It felt like such a ghost dead club almost. But, Arteta, he's managed to develop such a winning mentality, and the discipline as well has improved drastically. This is something that we would not have seen, a couple of seasons back. As a cause for concern, and this is also something that we've discussed a little bit, it's more of the squad's depth. It's because we've noticed this, especially during Europa League games when we have to make the rotations. Okay, we're still a decent side, we're still a dangerous side, but you notice that the quality does tend to drop a little bit, especially when we don't have the Xhaka, we don't have Partey in the center. So it would be nice if we can get another mid during January and possibly another striker just to have as a backup in case anything else happens to Jesus. So that would really be the one thing that I would like to see happen during January, is to bring in at least 2 to 3 more signings would really be good, because we need to add that depth. Otherwise, it's going to come to haunt us.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I mentioned this, I think it was either with G on the Armory recently or Albert on Lee Judge's TV. Arsenal need to be very, very careful especially when it comes to squad depth. And we only have to look at what happened after January last season. Now, admittedly and ironically, the injuries that we had, bar in midfield, were actually at fullback, which wasn't an area that we were looking to strengthen at the time in January. It was actually midfield and a striker. But nevertheless, there is a blueprint there. There is. We only have to look back at last season and think, right, what went wrong last season, and make sure it doesn't happen this season. So it's literally staring us in the face. So I really, really do hope that Arsenal do whatever it is that need to do in January. And funnily enough, we will be talking about January in a future live show. So we'll speak about that in more depth another time. But coming to you next, Neil, what are your thoughts on calls for concern and biggest positives so far this season?
Biggest positives for me is just the fight that this team is showing now, the consistency that they're showing, the work that they're putting in. There was one game that we had a casual approach to, and that was a United game, and that was kind of, I guess, our fault. But since then, we've really held on and showed that this is a different Arsenal. This is not the Arsenal from last year, the year before. Cause for concern, I share same sentiments with Tony. I think that we do need to have a few signings happening in January. I hope that with this new appointment that Edu has, it's going to give him more of a clout to be able to make these things happen and not too much having to get too much approval from the other people upstairs. I see that if we have a major injury, whether it be in our midfield or in our attacking line, we're gonna be struggling. And we've seen this movie before. We don't want to see another version of it because this is too close for us. We are so close to it. I mean, there's a lot of football to be played. Yes, I know. But at the same time, if we look at the trend says that we are in or on track for either first or second at this point in time.
We're in control at this point. There are worse places to be, and we're in a position to strengthen and put ourselves in an even better position moving forward. Sorry, Neil, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, absolutely. You're just adding to what I'm you're just basically adding the finishing finesses on it. You're just concreting it. We need to concrete what we want to do. And the only way we need to do that, and I said this with Gunnar King and them the other day, we need to attack that January window and make sure we get the players that we need in.
And it's the opinion is shared in the chat here with Tony as well. It's from an Arsenal's fan point of view. Obviously, it's great to be in the position that we're in. None of us were expecting us to be in this position. Obviously, it's welcome. Don't get me wrong. And even if we were third or fourth comfortably at the moment, I think it would still be the same opinion. It's just a different objective. I don't think that changes necessarily. But yeah, I think across the fan base, it's evident to see, what is wanted by the fans, what is needed by the club as well. Keith, what are your thoughts on biggest positive so far from the season and any causes for concern moving forward?
Very similar to what my two mates have just said, really. The steel that we're showing, the team spirit, and to coin a phrase, the connect between the players and the fans has been massive. If you look at last season, I think it was when we lost to Man United, then we went on that awful run where we lost, I think, to Everton, Brighton, Southampton, Crystal Palace. But when we lost to Man United this season, we then went and beat Brentford away, the Swamp Dwellers and Liverpool, and we scored 9 goals and conceded 3 in the next 3 games. Likewise with the poor performance against Southampton. So these are the only 2 games we've dropped points, and then we went and won 3 on the bounce again. So that for me is a huge, huge deal. Regarding my concerns, this kind of dovetails a little bit with one of the other things that I want to say that's positive. Obviously, it's the need to strengthen. When you look at our bench in our last game, there was only really KT and Vieira, I would say, are good enough to jump straight into that side, and they could, fill a role and do a job. When you look at the rest of them, they're not. I think, I really wanted Eddie Nketiah to succeed and be the player that he can be. I just don't think he's good enough, much as I want him to be. Same maybe with Reece. I know he did well against Forest, but these are kids that were not kids anymore. They're both 24. They've had an awful lot of investment placed upon their shoulders, a lot of pressure as well. But we do need strength, and like my old mate Mr. Silver Fox there has said, we do need at least 2 or 3 players.
Yeah.
But going back to the things that are positives, I think if you go back to the protests after the failed European Super League, and Silent Stan obviously saw that there was a lot of unrest. There was no respect for his tenure over owning this club. So from that point on, Josh Kroenke has pretty much been in London all the time. Stan's probably said, "Look, son, grow a beard, get yourself down there, be a little bit more, in people's faces." And
following me, I think.
And they've backed the club. And when you look at if you look at the hierarchy, for example, we'll simplify it a bit. You've got Josh Kroenke, then you've got Edu, and then you've got Mikel Arteta. The 3 of them all seem to be on the same page. And the selection process, the due diligence that they go through to go after a player, there aren't many that haven't succeeded over the last 2 or 3 years. All right, Tavares, he probably will end up going somewhere else because he's, let's face it, he's a little bit mental, really, isn't he? And he's not a very good defender. I'd like to see him as a winger. Like G said, maybe Sambi will have to go out on loan. But on the whole, the recruitment has been absolutely brilliant.
It has.
And I just think they know now, they hopefully have learned the mistakes of last January when they literally spent, 30 days of January. It's a good point, Tony. It does look really awesome. It's died though. It's definitely died.
100%.
Yeah, they spent probably 30 days of January going after Dusan Vlahovic, and you could see after a while, it's like, well, we were just scapegoats in that deal, so we can't ever do that again.
No.
But we do need to strengthen, because we don't want episode 5 or 6 of the documentary again, which I haven't watched yet. I can't bear to watch it.
No, don't want that.
No, we don't want to go there again. But yeah, sorry, waffled on a bit there, but those are my thoughts and concerns.
No, good points made. Very, very good points made, and different as well to what Neil and Tony said. And that's what we want. We want to look at and analyse all aspects of what Arsenal are doing, not just what we see on the pitch, not just what we see from the players, because what happens behind the scenes and what happens in the boardroom is just as important in terms of moving this club forward. Massive, absolutely massive. Now, we do have one final question before we finish up on today's show. And yes, I'm going to ask you again to like today's show if you have enjoyed it, and subscribe if you're new around here. You're probably bored of me saying it now, but just go and like the bloody stream and help me out.
Do it.
I'm very, very, very grateful. Thank you very much. So to finish up today's live show, Arteta's job has come under the microscope for many different reasons since taking over at Arsenal. Some have said politely, fuck the process. Others have backed him to the point where it's absolutely bonkers. However, he has done a great job. And, well, the whole reason he was brought in and the whole part of this process, we're really starting to see why now. Keith, I'm going to come to you for this final question. I just wanted to ask, I know we're only 14 games in, but what have you made of the job that he's done so far this season?
Right. Firstly, as I said earlier, I've always supported him. I don't know. I just always saw something in him. I can't even tell you what it was, but when everything's flying around, and it's like on Twitter, there was like literally there was divide down the middle. We were like a split camp, and I was always I don't like the phrase, manager in, manager out, But I was always Arteta in, and I can't even tell you why. And I think if it wasn't for lockdown and empty stadiums, when we had that awful run, was it November, December?
Yeah, it was
20. He probably would have been out of a job, to be honest. I think there would have been that much going on in the stadium. He probably would have got the same treatment as Unai Emery, and he might have been out of a job. But I'm very happy that he is still here.
Same.
For a while, I didn't really know what his footballing philosophy was, but now we're seeing it. It's literally as clear as day.
Yeah.
And if I was to mark somebody out of 10, like anyone at work, when you have an appraisal or, you know, an annual review, you never get a 10 out of 10 because then someone's saying you're brilliant. There's no way you could improve. Obviously, there's still places he can improve.
Yeah.
You know, I mentioned earlier about I thought he made a mistake against Man United. So for me, I give him an 8 out of 10. But I love this bloke. And especially after watching the All or Nothing episodes 1 to 4, because as I said, I can't watch the end ones until we win something, or at least get into the Champions League. But he just seems a really, really decent bloke. And his football brain, you can see that he's picked a lot of stuff up from Pep. You can see he's picked up a lot of stuff from Arsene Wenger. But the thing that strikes me the most, and once I've said this bit, I'll bugger off and let someone else have a word. Granit Xhaka has played for Arsene Wenger, Unai Emery, Freddie Ljungberg, and Mikel Arteta. Arsene Wenger, in my mind, is like he's beyond up there. I can't even tell you how much I worship that guy. But Mikel Arteta is the first one to put him in the role he's supposed to play in.
Yeah.
That tells you about the guy's footballing IQ. I can't really say much more than that. 8 out of 10, Mikel. Very, very well done. The most you'd ever get is a 9 anyway, mate. Win us something this year, you perhaps might get a 9. But yeah.
I'd have to agree with you on that one. If he wins something this year, especially the Premier League, he's going to get a 9. He's definitely getting a 9.
We're not going to
Maybe
win
a 9.5.
Stop it, Jake.
I know, I'm getting too excited. Tony, what are your thoughts?
Arteta's job is it's as secure as the rugged, handsome beards on all 3 of your faces, and that of Josh as well. It really, if you stop and look at it right now, the results are literally speaking for themselves. There's really not a whole lot more that could be said, and it's interesting that Keith actually just pointed out the fact that Arteta is utilizing Xhaka correctly. And I've been saying that it takes the correct manager with the correct attributes to bring out the best in another player, if the player is willing for that. And it's definitely noticeable now. Realistically, it's the squad, our style of play, it has an identity. It's Arteta ball. It really is what it is.
It is.
And it's the tactic, everything that he's really done to improve on this club. It's taken it a while. But then again, look at George Graham. How long did it take him to get the squad up and running to where it was? Exactly. And then we were in a drought for how long? For about 18 years. We've been in a drought now for trophies close to 18 years, or not 18 years, I think. And this is Arteta's, third year, I think it is now?
Third year, yeah.
So I ain't saying nothing. I'm not saying nothing.
The stars are aligning. They're falling into place.
I don't know, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and everything else is falling into line. But again, like I said, the results really have spoken for themselves, and this is literally, apart from Wenger, this has been the most excited that I've seen a manager in a squad to see them actually performing and playing on the pitch is spectacular.
No, great points.
We've played since we were the Invincibles, when we used to counter-attack teams to death and move the ball forward so quickly. I've not seen us play like this since then.
It's been a long, long time. A very, very, very long time. Neil, what can you add to what has already been said about Arteta? All been so positive.
Sack him.
Absolutely. Get him out.
Get him out of my club.
If it would be something else, that it would be, Mikel Arteta to lift the first Premier League trophy at the Emirates.
Oof, don't.
That would definitely be something. But I would encourage you guys to, if you can, watch. There's a documentary called "Take the Ball, Pass the Ball." It's about Barcelona and when Pep just took over at Barcelona from their B team somewhere. And when I looked at that documentary, and I was like, and when they were showing what he was trying to implement and what the philosophy was and how he was using these players and how he was using these wide players and having them as inverted DMs and coming inside. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is what Arteta is trying to do. And when I saw it and the way that the football is played, and at that time with that specific those 4 years he was there at Barcelona, and now looking at what Mikel is implemented, in addition to not just that, but what he's also picked up from other managers like Wenger and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like you have to say, I was definitely ready to say, listen, get him out, because this is not going. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere. But I'm gonna eat my words, and I'm gonna say I'm sorry for saying that, because I'm happy he stayed. It's good to see like what patience brings. The patience of allowing this man to implement his ideas, his philosophy, get the players that he really wants, and let the team gel, and this is what you have right now.
Yeah.
14 games in, 1 loss, 1 draw, 5 points clear of Manchester City. That has an alien for a striker.
Sends shivers up my spine saying that.
Like we have to put this into perspective. Manchester City does not have no crappy team. Their team is worth over $1 billion. Erling Haaland is on that team. This guy he's on track to break records in terms of scoring goals. But yet we're 5 points clear of that team. Speaks volumes to what Mikel Arteta is doing at the club. So I'm looking forward to after the World Cup, Boxing Day. I can't wait.
Mate, I can't wait either. It's like the World Cup's come at the most worst time.
Yeah.
I don't care about World Cup. I'm just going to sleep till Boxing Day.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit.
Just get knackered.
Brilliant.
Just pass out.
There's at least one positive thing is that we're not going to be without Arsenal to have to wait that long, because we still have the Dubai Cup that we're going to be participating in.
Yeah, there is that.
There's a little something in there, so at least it'll keep us.
Is it going to be televised?
I'd imagine so. I reckon there'll probably be some sort of fee behind it. I reckon it'll be like a $5 a game on the website, like it normally is.
Alina will be there. Guarantee that much.
I'll probably put some. I'll put some.
Who is this Alina? Anywho, that is going to about wrap things up for this live show. As mentioned earlier on, this will be the first of many during the World Cup, and a theme that will be carried on once the season is back underway as well. So live shows are here to stay alongside the tactical videos that you guys are all used to seeing. But firstly, I would like to thank my wonderful panel for their answers to all of today's questions. Thank you all very much for coming along. And just before they say goodbye and tell you where they can find you, yes, like the goddamn stream and subscribe. But aside to that, we will be changing memberships. I mentioned it at the start of the stream. In the next live show, I will be giving away some free memberships for an opportunity for people to come on and appear on Arsenal Analysed moving forwards. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But more importantly, Neil, thank you very much for coming on. Where can the people find you if they do want to interact?
You could find me on YouTube as the BenchWarmerz podcast, on Twitter, Neil Dwarka, and it's not on Twitter, right? No, on Twitter, but on BenchWarmerz podcast as well, and Instagram and Facebook there as Neil Dwarka, the realtor.
Lovely.
Details. Buy some houses in Florida, people.
Tap him up. Details down in the description below. Yeah. Likewise with the gents at the bottom of your screen. Tony, if they do want to come and find you for a chat, where can they find you, my friend?
Yeah. Well, first of all, massive thank you, JC, for once again inviting me on with all of my weirdness and strangeness. Huge thank you. Second of all, if you're watching this, like the stream and subscribe.
Yeah.
And you can find me on Twitter at Aletriz Antonio, or just look for Judge Dredd the Law. My content it's relatively simple, a little bit of geek stuff, but mostly Arsenal stuff. Yeah, definitely come by and buy a house over here in Florida. Just wait, until the hurricanes and stuff are done, and you'll be safe then.
Thank you very much for coming along and sharing some of your time with us this evening. Can't wait to get you back on as well. And last but not least, Keith, where can the people find you, my friend?
Well, firstly, instead of plugging myself, I just want to say this group, right? I love doing this. Quite often when you do live stream, I don't know if everyone gets this. I get a little bit nervous beforehand, but I've been looking forward to this all day because it's just like four blokes, like mates, sat in a pub talking about football, and this is so much fun for me. But anyone who's watching, seriously, just fucking like Arsenal Analysed, like subscribe to the channel, like this video, and hit the notification bell so you never ever have to miss anything again. But these two guys from Florida, right, they are two of the nicest people, even though I've never actually physically met them. We've all got virtual friends. Two of the nicest people that I've ever met. And it's a pleasure to do this with them. I'm concerned about when we play the USA in the World Cup, just what the fuck's going to happen. Ice them out. Don't talk to them for 90 minutes. No, seriously, like follow these two guys as well on Twitter, and Neil's starting to do a more short format of his podcasts, and it's always highly entertaining, highly insightful, and you really, really need to look up BenchWarmerz with a Z, because he doesn't know how to spell because he lives in America.
That's right.
With a Z. And I'm reliably informed that Tony's going to start a YouTube channel soon, because you should see this Jesus shirt collection. It's ridiculous. Yes. Absolutely ridiculous. And he looks like an East End gangster tonight. I love that look with the hat and the chain, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at the Mad Rambling one, and I'll do some other stuff. But I'm not sure what to do with that at the moment. But yeah, this was great fun. Cheers, Jakey.
Always a pleasure, and thank you all for coming on this evening. Really, really, really do appreciate it. And thank you for everyone who has been involved in the chat this evening. Hopefully we can see you next weekend for the next episode of Arsenal Analysed Live, where we will be looking at rating every Arsenal player out of 10 so far this season, and arguing, no doubt, about who makes the top 11 players in the Premier League this season. That's going to be an interesting one. So get your thinking caps on, lads. Make sure you're available next week, because we're doing team of the season so far in the Premier League next weekend.
I bet Tony will be in there. Get what I'm saying.
You can bet on it. Anyway, look, thank you all for coming along this evening. Really, really, really do appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time. But for now, I'm JC, and I will catch you next weekend with these handsome gentlemen. Take care and stay safe.